Hello, my dear learners. Welcome to the second session on Introduction to Design and Analysis of Algorithms. Today, we will learn the definition of two frequently used terms in algorithm theory, that is, problem and problem or input instance. Although we have been acquainted with the term problem since our childhood, we have solved many mathematical problems and worked out important scientific calculations. Still, many of us find difficulties in formally defining the term problem. Before I give the formal definition of problem, I like to provide some real life examples, and from these examples, we will learn the definition of problem. When we say problem, we generally mean the problem of computing. What is your percentage of mark in the 10th board exam? Or the problem of finding the shortest path between your hostel and college? Or maybe the problem of searching a book in the library, or maybe given a question paper and you are asked to write an exam within a given deadline. You may be asked to arrange the evaluated answer scripts by non-increasing order of secured marks. So all these five examples we have seen the examples of the problems, and these are the daily life problems that we face as a student. You might have noticed that when we are talking about a problem, there are certain inputs which need to be supplied and there are certain outputs which need to be produced. Let's see our first example, that is the percentage example. When we are asked to compute the percentage of our 10th exam, then we have to supply two input parameters, that is full mark and secured mark. So this input, full mark and secured mark constitute an input, and these two are called the input parameters. And as output we desire the percentage. Similarly, for our shortest path problem, we have input, three input parameters. We have to supply hostel address, we have to supply college address, and all paths connecting your hostel to the college. You have to specify the distance covered by each path, and as output you desire the path having the shortest distance. Similarly, for the searching a book in the library problem, you have three input parameters, that is library, department section within the library, and name of the book that you are searching. As output you desired the answer whether you find the book or not, that is in terms of yes or no. And if you find the book, that is, if the answer is yes, then you have to specify the location of the book. This is your desired output. Similarly, for the exam problem, you have to specify three input parameters, that is a set of questions. Of course, each question carries some marks, then duration of time and the full mark, and the desired output is the secured mark. Similarly, for shorting of answer script problem, we have to specify the array of marks obtained by the students, and as output we have to produce a shorted array of marks which is showing the marks in non-increasing order. At this point, we have got some fair idea to define a problem. So when we say problem, we have to define input and output parameters, and also we have to specify the acceptable values to these parameters. For example, in our first problem, for secured mark, we have to define a set of values. Means, suppose full mark is 750, so secured mark should be within 1 to 750. It should not exceed 750. Likewise, for the output parameter, that is percentage, we have to specify a set of accepted values. That is, the percentage shouldn't exceed 100. The value should be 1 to 100. Similarly, for the second problem, for each input parameter we have to specify the value. Suppose for the address we have to specify a valid address, and for example for the paths we have to specify some distances in terms of meters. Of course, inputs which are valid for one problem need not be valid for another problem, and typically is not. In our first example, we have inputs in terms of marks, in terms of numbers, and these input do not make sense, or these value do not make sense for the shortest path problem, where we need addresses, valid addresses as input. Similarly, these addresses do not make sense for the searching book problem, where we need the book name, some strings of characters. Okay. Similarly, this book name has no sense in case of our writing exam problem, and these questions have no make sense for the as input for the sorting of answer script problem. Now we are in a very good state to formally define a problem. We can define a problem as the specification of valid inputs and acceptable outputs for each valid input. So we are talking about a problem means you have to specify the input parameters and the output parameters and the values, acceptable values for the input parameters and the output parameters. We often use the phrase problem instance while we are computing some problem, or while we are designing some algorithm. Then we generally use the term problem instance or input instance. So what is a problem instance or input instance? Sometimes we also call as only instance. So before formally defining this term, let us again go through some examples. Like in our percentage problem, we have two input parameters, that is full mark and secure mark, and we specify, when we specify values to the input parameters, then it becomes a problem instance. Means if you specify value to the full mark equal to 750 and secure mark equal to 675, then it becomes a problem instance. It means this is the secure mark for a particular student, and we will, according to our input parameters, we will get the output parameter in terms of percentage, in terms of some percentage, 90%. So this becomes a problem instance. Similarly, for the second problem, shortest path problem, when you specify some valid address to the hostel address, some valid address, for the college address, some valid address, and these are the paths, and these are the distances in terms of meters, and we as our output we have a minimum distance, so we have to select a path having the minimum distance. So this becomes a problem instance. Similarly, for the searching book problem, we have to specify values to each input parameter. Like for library, we have to specify the value as the central, department is CSE, and book is Dijon analysis of algorithm DA. So as output, if we find the book in the library, then yes, and what is the location. Similarly, for the exam problem, you have to specify a set of question, and each question carries some mark, like question 1 carries 2, question 2 carries 5, and so on. And we have to specify the mark, full mark is 100, and we have to specify the time as 3 hours, and the desired output is the secured mark. Similarly, for the sorting of answer script problem, we have the inputs, that is the marks of the student, is the mark of the 9 students, and we have to arrange this mark in non-increasing order. So this is our output. So now an instance is nothing but the values given to the input parameters of the problem. So when we give some values to the input parameter of the problems, then it is called a instance, input instance, or problem instance, or simply instance. So now we can define instance as a value x as an input instance for the problem P if x is a valid input as per the specification. I hope this video helped you to understand the definition of problem and input instance or problem instance. Thanks for joining in this video. Let's meet again in the next video. Take care and bye bye.